Me live today. This is week no. Yeah, I know. Don't use a paper recipe and put it on the stove. I know. I learned my lesson. I did not start a fire thanks to you, Chris. All right, week 3, Nutrition Simplified. Today we're going to be talking about simple cooking skills, like I said, to make it a lot easier to cook those whole food recipes at home. And cooking does not have to be complicated to support balanced meals with protein, veggies, whole grains, healthy fats, and dairy. So we're going to simplify cooking today. It's probably one of my most favorite classes out of this entire series today because I love cooking. I grew up watching Food Network and the cooking channel. I strive to be like Ina Garten every time I'm in the kitchen. So we're going to talk all about it today. I'm excited. And our agenda, we're going to be diving into some kitchen staples that might be helpful for you when you're cooking at home more frequently. And then we're going to make sure you understand cooking terms and techniques, which is very important because a lot of times when we're reading a recipe, it can be very confusing with the terminology that they use. So I want to go over some of those key words that you might need to know. And then I'll give you some helpful resources when it comes to finding those recipes. We've talked a little bit that in previous weeks, but we'll dive a little bit deeper today. So we're going to start with the staples. Now you might not need all of these items, okay, but they might come in handy. So first you've got your skillets and your pots, which can be used to cook a wide variety of foods on the stovetop, like your proteins, your vegetables, your rice, and your pastas. And then a sheet pan is used for when you're utilizing your oven. Glass storage containers are super helpful for storing those leftovers. We talked a lot about utilizing leftovers the past couple of weeks, so that's pretty helpful to have. A good set of knives is a really great thing to have in your kitchen. And then if you need to be very precise with your recipes, you might need some measuring spoons, some cups, especially if you're baking, if you're trying out any healthy desserts or anything like that, you might need those measuring cups and spoons. I know some people prefer to eyeball certain ingredients when you're cooking, so you might not need these items all the time, depending on your skill level. But having a few basic tools can really make cooking at home faster and easier, which then helps your reliance on those processed foods, on eating out, and all of that jazz. So, knowing how to use your knives is extremely important. I encourage everyone to watch the video that I linked right here when you have some time. It's going to walk you through each knife and what it should be used for. And it's going to tell you how to keep your knives sharp, which is very important. Here are some popular cutting terms that you might see in recipes when you're reading through them. If it says to chop, that means to cut the food roughly into bite-sized pieces. And then if you see dice, that means to cut into small, uniform squares. Now, it's important to note that diced foods cook faster than chopped foods. So if you're in a crunch for time, you might consider dicing your food rather than chopping it. A helpful way to do that really quickly is to purchase a vegetable chopper, which I went ahead and included the link. Go straight to Amazon just because I have found this to be the most helpful kitchen tool in my house. So wanted to include that for you if you need it. Saves a lot of time. Mincing means to cut something into very, very tiny pieces. If you're cooking with garlic, it will most likely say to mince your garlic or cut it into very small pieces. And then the last term is to julienne, which is a very pretty way of saying to cut something into short, thin strips. So kind of think of shredded carrots that you would buy in a pack. That's what it would look like when you're trying to julienne something. Here are some more kitchen staples with links to Amazon in case you're just interested in purchasing any of these items. You don't have to by any means, but I just wanted to make it easy for you if you don't have any of these in your kitchen already. A colander or a strainer is going to be used when you're draining water from pasta, or it can be used and is really helpful when you're trying to wash fruits and vegetables. So the one I linked here is extendable, so it can adjust to the length of your sink so that you don't have to set it inside your sink, which is a great way to avoid any cross-contamination and that sort of stuff, which we'll talk about later. But the next item is a grater, which is going to be best for grating your cheese or your vegetables. It has different cutting designs on each side so that you can grate or you can slice something and use one tool for both, which is fantastic. And then if you're cooking or grilling any protein, it might be helpful to have a thermometer so that you can make sure that your meat is fully cooked, or if you're cooking steak or something like that, cooked to your liking. I get very, very worried with chicken, so a thermometer just helps me feel at ease when I'm cooking it for my kid and my family. So a spatula set is super helpful to have so you can stir and fold and saute, flip, anything that you're cooking. So a good set is nice to have. And then a pair of tongs is good to have on hand so you can grab food safely without touching it, without burning your hands, all that good stuff. Tongs can be great for serving dishes as well. If you're having a group over and you want to serve, that's a great thing to have on hand. Lastly is a good cutting board. I went ahead and linked a bamboo set of cutting boards with lots of different size options. Bamboo is going to be the best option with cutting boards, just to avoid any plastics and that stuff getting into your food. So bamboo set is a great thing to have. Kitchen appliances that could be helpful. So you do not have to go and buy any of these again. You can already use what you have in your kitchen, but an air fryer is something that I have loved using because it's just a way to make frying something a little bit healthier. So I love to cut up some sweet potatoes, throw it in the air fryer, and it feels like I'm eating French fries because they're nice, crispy, and delicious. And again, I'm not using any added oils or anything like that. So it's a great healthy way to kind of fry your foods. A blender or a food processor can come in handy if you like smoothies, or if you want to create your own sauces. That's a great appliance to have. And then there are so many good sauce recipes that utilize Greek yogurt that can be made in the food processor, adds a little bit of protein. I recommend making your own salad dressings to try it out. It's not too hard. It's pretty simple, especially if you have that food processor. So making your own dressings can be very fun, and then you know exactly what ingredients are going into those dressings. And then an Instant Pot, a pressure cooker, a slow cooker. We've talked about this so many times, just an easy way to make cooking a lot easier for you. I'm a huge fan of the crock pot recipes because you throw it in, you forget about it, you go to work, and when you get home, you have a nice, perfect meal waiting for you and your family. All right, food safety. It's really important when we talk about cooking to dive a little bit deeper into food safety because safety first. And like Chris said, don't use paper recipes and set them on your stove. Bad decision all around, so don't do that. First safety tip of the day. When preparing to cook, step one should be always to clean. Okay, wash your hands before and after prepping your food. Wash your utensils that you're going to use and make sure that your surfaces are very clean after you use anything. Make sure you wash your fruits and veggies, very important, under running water. Don't use any soaps on your fruits and veggies, just running water. We don't want those chemicals of the soap in our foods, so just water, but make sure you clean them. Step two is to make sure you separate your food items. So use separate cutting boards for produce, meat, poultry, seafood, and eggs. Use separate plates and utensils for any cooked and raw foods. We don't want, again, any cross-contamination when we're cooking, so be very mindful of that. Separate your foods. The next step is going to be to cook. So when you're cooking, just utilize that thermometer, like I mentioned earlier, to just make sure that your food is cooked to a safe temperature to eat. Again, I get very freaked out about my chicken. Also, pork chops, I get freaked out as well. So using a thermometer has really just helped to ease my anxiety when it comes to undercooked chicken. After cooking, make sure you keep your food hot. Very important. You don't want to leave meat sitting at room temperature for too long. This is also very important to think about in the summer when you're eating outside. You have some barbecues happening. If you've got a potato salad or anything like that, just make sure it's not sitting outside for too long. You don't want it to get to room temperature. And then lastly, make sure that you microwave your food thoroughly to make sure it's nice and hot before you eat it. Again, diving in deeper into chilling your food, you can refrigerate perishable foods within 2 hours. Again, do not leave those perishable foods out of the refrigerator for more than 2 hours. So again, if you're doing a barbecue, try not to let that stuff sit out for more than 2 hours. If the temperature of the food is above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, then you're gonna wanna refrigerate it within 1 hour. Remember to thaw your food in the refrigerator. I have made this mistake many, many times. We freeze a lot of our protein just because it's easier and it works for our schedule and stuff. So the day before, or the night before, I like to throw it in the refrigerator to thaw. But a lot of times I forget, and so the next day I just go ahead and set it out on the counter. But then the issue is if you forget about it and it sits out for too long, then it can grow a lot of bacteria, and that's not good. So good rule of thumb is just to set it in your refrigerator overnight before you want to cook it. So again, kind of have to plan. Here's a big list of terms that you might see when you're reading a recipe. So we're going to talk about some of these more in depth in the upcoming slides, but I'll be honest with you, some of these words I've never even seen ever in recipes, so don't get too worried if you've never seen some of these, because chances are if you're sticking to basic recipes, you're probably not going to see some of these. But going deeper into some terms, you're going to see first with the stovetop. I know when we cook steak at our house, I like to sear it first and then pop it into the oven to cook it through. So if you're searing something, that's when you're gonna brown it very quickly at a high temperature. So it's almost a nice little crust on the outside. This is gonna enhance the flavor of it. It's gonna enhance the color of it to whatever you're cooking. So I love searing. And then next is to saute. So you've probably seen saute when you're cooking vegetables like onions. To do that, you're gonna cook your food until it gets to a brown color in a small amount of hot fat. So maybe it's olive oil or whatever oil you're using. You wanna get it hot and then add in those onions or vegetables. You wanna make sure that you are constantly flipping and stirring the food as it cooks at a high temperature, because you don't want it to burn and you don't want it to stick. Next is to stir fry. You'll use the least amount of fat to heat meat, fish, or vegetables very quickly and over a high heat while stirring very briskly. I love my vegetables cooked this way. I feel like it adds a lot of flavor, and it's pretty quick and simple. So stir frying is a great option, and it uses very minimal fat. So the next way to cook on the stovetop is the steam method. You can do this in many different ways. But the first is to place the food in a rack or steamer basket above boiling water. And then you're gonna cover the pot or pan with a lid to kind of trap that steam in. Or you could wrap the food in foil or parchment paper before it's baked or grilled. That's another way to steam. Or if you want the quickest method, you can move to the microwave and cover food in a plastic wrap to facilitate steaming. But the steaming method helps to really retain texture and color and those nutrients of our foods. So this is a great thing to do with vegetables because you're keeping all of those really good nutrients and vitamins in there. Poaching is one of the toughest things to do in my opinion, so I try to avoid it at all costs. But this is where your water is heated to a very specific temperature of about 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can cook delicate foods like fish, eggs is a big one, but poaching definitely takes some practice. So if you're newer to the kitchen, probably don't recommend cooking your eggs or your fish that way. Now let's talk about some oven basics. So to cook in the oven, you're gonna need either a pan or a baking sheet, like I mentioned before. Your oven is most likely gonna be preheated to 250 degrees to 500 degrees based on what you're cooking. But you can cook all different types of food in the oven. Some of my favorite recipes are one-pan meals that cook all in the oven on one sheet. So you throw the vegetables, you throw the meat all in one pan, you throw it in the oven. It's super quick and it's super simple and it's easy. In the oven, hot air is used to cook the food covered or uncovered. Now really pay attention if the recipe says to cover your food or not, because it's gonna cook differently whether or not it's covered. So just be mindful of that. Roasting vegetables is a great way to add flavor. You're gonna wanna preheat your oven to about 400 degrees. You're gonna rinse and cut your veggies however you'd like. Just make sure they're in bite-sized pieces. And then spread the veggies out on a sheet pan without much overlap. You kind of want an even layer. And then drizzle with a little oil. Olive oil is a great option to coat, and then sprinkle some of your favorite seasonings on there. Remember, season. We don't want our foods bland. And then you're gonna bake until it's tender. So easy peasy. Baking chicken is something that everyone should know how to do. Here is how to bake boneless and skinless chicken breast. You're gonna preheat your oven at 450 degrees. Place 4 chicken breasts in your baking dish or your pan. You're gonna brush both sides with oil and then rub in your seasonings. You can bake the chicken for about 15 to 18 minutes or until the thickest part of the chicken reads about 165 degrees. Again, the thermometer comes in handy for this. And then once it's cooked, remove it from the oven, cover it with foil to kind of allow the chicken to rest for 5 to 10 minutes before serving. That's a really important way to kind of keep those juices in and make sure your chicken doesn't turn out dry, because no one likes dry chicken. Next is salmon. So again, you're gonna preheat the oven to 450, line a baking sheet with foil. Make sure that you blot the salmon dry on all sides. This is a very important step. Place your salmon skin side down if it still has the skin, and then brush with oil. Sprinkle with your seasonings, and then you're gonna bake it until the salmon reaches about 145 degrees. And then once it's cooked, remove it. And then I love to sprinkle a little lemon juice on there. Just a nice way to add some freshness to the salmon. I also love doing salmon in the air fryer. It's way easier than the oven, in my opinion. I cut it into cubes, and then I marinate the salmon. I let it sit in the fridge for a little bit before I'm ready to cook it. And then I put it in the air fryer at 400 degrees for 8 minutes, and it's done. And it's so crispy, so delicious, so that's another option as well. Salads are a great thing to make for lunch or add as a side with dinner. And it's a great way to add variety into your diet, and everyone can make their salad to their liking, which is great. So add your favorite leafy greens to a bowl, add your favorite vegetables, fruits, and even grains, and then add a protein of your choice. And you want to consider adding some small portions of maybe avocados, cheeses, or dried fruit are great options to add to salads. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, try to make your own dressing. It's a great challenge, and it's a great way to make sure you're eating fresh ingredients. Quinoa is a very delicious and nutritious grain, so we're going to chat about how to make it. You could add quinoa in a salad, like I said, or you can have it as a side with your baked chicken or your baked salmon. You're going to rinse and drain 1 cup of uncooked quinoa. You're going to heat olive oil and then add the quinoa and cook it for about 2 minutes. And then you're going to get the quinoa lightly toasted. This kind of gets the flavor out, which is delicious. And then stir in 1 3/4 cup of water or low sodium broth, and then bring that to a boil. Lower the heat, and then you're gonna cook it uncovered for 15 minutes. Remove from the heat and then let it stand for about 5 minutes. You can uncover it and fluff it with a fork. I love, love, love to add lemon zest at this step once it's cooked to just add even more flavor. It's delicious, makes it taste super fresh. Here are some great recipe resources if you're needing to add more inspiration to your weekly meals for healthy meals. American Heart Association has great low sodium heart healthy options if that's up your alley right now. The USDA and MyPlate have many different recipes on their websites. You can filter through them based on what you're looking for. So if you're looking for specific diabetes friendly recipes, check out that link right there. And as a reminder, I'm going to be sending this slide deck over to you after today, so you'll have access to all of these links, but great options to have on hand if you need some more inspiration. Okay, wrapping it up today, we're going to decide on our next steps. So maybe you try and cook 1 more meal at home this week. It's a great challenge. Maybe you found an item that might be helpful for you in the kitchen and you try a new cooking technique with it. I want you to try to write something down, maybe throw it in the chat for us to kind of hold yourself accountable. But I also went ahead and linked our cooking demos right here. So we've got a playlist on our YouTube channel of all of our previous cooking demos that we've done. They're max 30 minutes in length, so they're all simple recipes that are very easy, very nutritious. I also put the link to register for our cooking demos to have the live invites. So if you're wanting to join us live for our monthly cooking demos, register using that link. It is our CubeFit platform, but you can select which classes you want. So if you only want cooking demos, you can just select cooking demos and I'll send you those invites. All right, so make sure you check those out. I just did one this week that was a green chicken enchilada skillet. It was absolutely delicious, a huge hit with everyone in my family, so highly recommend that. It was a great high protein, lots of veggies, lots of fiber, and just a clean way to make enchiladas at home. So highly recommend that. That wraps up our third class of Nutrition Simplified. Next week will be our final session together. We're gonna discuss dining out, which we know that you can't always cook at home. So we wanna give you tips, tools for eating healthy while you're dining out, which is really important. So don't miss that session next week. Again, we will be recording it if something pops up, so no worries there. All right, you guys, come off mute if you have any questions at all. A stainless one for cutting meat. Nice. Could dull the knives. Yeah, good points there. Let me know if you have any questions, throw it in the chat, come off mute, but if not, thank you guys so much for joining. Have an awesome rest of your Friday. Have a good weekend. We'll see y'all next week.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seasonings for quinoa. I mean, I would keep it pretty simple. My philosophy is adding a lot of seasoning to my protein and keeping my grains kind of minimally seasoned, and that's where I kind of add citrus, so lemon juice, orange, I mean literally anything, but that's kind of my philosophy. Salt and pepper, that's what I like to do, but by any means you can add any seasonings to quinoa. It really doesn't matter. But if you're cooking like a Southwest Mexican inspired dish, maybe you add some more Southwest seasonings into the quinoa just to add flavor. But yeah, pretty up to you. Cut them up. Yep. Really important. Yeah, get those cutting skills, those chopping skills in order to make sure that everything's even and cut to the same size so that they all cook equally. Great call out. Oh, you have yours already? Please share. I will create polls for next week, so be on the lookout for that. I love it. That's a great idea. All right, you guys. If there's no more questions, I'm going to hop off for the day. Have an awesome rest of your Friday, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye.